All right, so I got some requests to do some more videos on kind of each of the 3D finishing strategies in HSMWorks. But the one I got directly requested was the morph strategy. And it was kind of phrased in a funny way. It was like, can you show me how to make a clean toolpath, or how to get the morph strategy to create a clean toolpath? And I thought that was funny because one of the reasons I like morph is because of its ability to create a super clean toolpath that sort of follows the lines and the curves of the part. But with that, I think there's some caveats. Morph is still a 2D projection strategy, so much like parallel, parallel, I discussed it creates back and forth lines and then sort of projects that down along your Z vector onto the model. Morph does the same thing, only rather than doing straight lines, it has you input some guide curves and then morphs between those guide curves. Literally just fills in everything that's from one curve to the other curve in some set interval, and then projects that down. And so much like parallel, because it's being projected down along the Z vector, when you get into areas that have a lot of steepness, it's not going to project along them very well. So use it mostly in places that are relatively shallow, not where there's a whole ton of contour. You're probably noticing a pattern. A lot of toolpaths have that same restriction, particularly in HSMWorks. It just, a lot of the toolpaths function that way, and it's not a bad thing. It's just the way they work, and so understanding that is really the key to getting something clean out of it. So first I wanted to show you sort of what not to do. I think there's a couple of things that people jump into morph assuming it's just going to do exactly what they want, and they get something that's not what they want. So first, let's make the first newbie mistake here, and that is apparently whatever I did here. I'll just select things wrong. I sort of intentionally did it. If you look at this toolpath, at this guide curve, it's heading one direction, the other one's heading the other direction. What's going to happen is it's going to try and morph from this corner to that corner, this corner to that corner, and we'll get something. No, let's just look at it. Oh, I forgot to add in a step over. Check use step over, there we go. We'll go into some of those details a little bit more later, but yeah, you can see totally useless, right? Completely garbage toolpath. I wonder what this even looks like when you simulate it. It's certainly not going to be, look at that, that's horrible. Completely the opposite of what we're looking for, and certainly the reason probably half of the people who hate this toolpath hate it. Okay, so let's simply correct that, but we'll look at some of the other issues. Now, because this takes input, it's susceptible to the garbage in, garbage equals garbage out sort of theory. If you don't feed it something that's clean, you'll get something out that's dirty. Here, we probably want to fill in this whole area. Our curve only extends to here, so naturally it's just going to, it can't fill in what's beyond that. We can sort of force it to try by having it extend these out, but they won't necessarily extend in the way that we want. And let's just add in some stuff to make it a little bit more confusing here to the algorithm. Boy, look at that. Now we got something pretty ugly there. We got this really odd collapse because now it includes this. So like I said, garbage in equals garbage out. You have to feed it a clean sketch. And then I guess the last thing too is that this here is not going to fill in the area because we're using this curve. And so the contact point, when you use that curve for the center point, is somewhere up here. So it's just not even going to fill it in. So that's some stuff to remember. Selecting the curves really isn't a replacement for your containment. These are just guide curves. It's just to generate the toolpath. If your input is crap, your output is crap. So let's fix some of it. I didn't want to spend the time. I've got two sketches here that I sort of pre-made. Let's look at them. I'll sort of describe how each one of them was made. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. They're both really pretty similar. They're also not entirely perfect. You could do some manual cleaning here, like this curve doesn't perfectly, it's not perfectly smooth there. If it was, it would be better. But basically, converted a bunch of this geometry off, extended it past by a bunch, offset it. Didn't offset it. That one's just how it is. Next I took and grabbed that same geometry that we used in our selection, but continued it all the way up along on both sides. Then I offset that out to make sure that we have enough coming past to cover the area. Pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, because I offset this curve here, the resulting curve isn't exactly smooth. All right, let's jump out of that. Let's look at the next one. For this one, I just grabbed this sort of inside curve here, offset it in, offset it out. Just making sure to get it past far enough. Let's even go a little bit further than that. Just getting it out far enough. They're both pretty self-explanatory. I think this one, the curves are both a lot smoother because this inside curve was just really nice and clean. Again, I extended both of these out past the area that we want to use. It fully covers it. Should be good to go. All right, let's hop into that morphing strategy that we've got. Let's get rid of this crap. Let's grab our sketch. Grab this one first. It's important, especially when you're selecting a sketch, to make sure that they're both still going the same direction. It's not uncommon that they'll wind up opposite from each other. And if it does that, you usually need to break your sketch up into two pieces so that you can select each guide curve itself and be able to reverse it. If you reverse it, it reverses both. Okay, machining boundary. Hey, we learned how to use this. Let's pop in here and put it to work. Let's just start grabbing a bunch of faces. That one. And let's grab this too. Okay, tool contact point boundary. Let's go a little bit more than our tolerance. Good. Up in here, that's fine. We don't want the model bottom to trim it, but in this case, model bottom's way down there. I'd already enabled use step over. Let's talk about this for a second. You have two options. For some reason, you can, if you wanted to specify the number of step overs, you can do that. Pretty much, I just always use the maximum step over, which lets you actually spec, and it's not a scallop height step over. It's not an equal step over. It's just going to be the step over. When it generates these offset passes, it figures out where the furthest, where the area is that will have the largest step over, and does them at that amount. So it'll be inconsistent, but it has to be because we're morphing through two curves that, at least in this case, have different distances. All that's fine. We probably want to turn on smoothing and use a smaller over there. And we'll enable shortest path. Everything else looks fine. Okay, so what did we get? We got something that looks pretty clean. Let's hop in here and let's look at some stuff. It should be just hitting that contact point perfect. Looks like it is. It's nice and clean. Some of that offset from the other one is manifesting in a little bit more curvature through here than we probably need. Let's run it through. Still, I mean, it's pretty clean. I would have no qualms running that, especially if it's if I had generated this and I was ready to go, I'd go out and run it. I wouldn't probably spend any more time tweaking it unless I really wanted it to be perfect. Let's take a look at the other one because I want to show something that's kind of neat. That sort of once the containment's set up, that 2D or that your guide curves could be manipulated pretty easy. And so using the same operation, let's duplicate it. Let's hop in here. Let's get rid of the old sketch. Let's put it in the new sketch. Generate that. And there we have it. We have a new, much less curvature even. That one looks pretty good. It's a little wavy up in here, but it's still filling to the same exact extents. For all purposes, it's still covering the same exact area. It's still nice and clean. All right, let's hop in, look at one of these operations and go over some of the Morph sort of specific settings. We already talked about use step over. For some reason you wanted to, you could specify the number of step overs rather than specifying the actual amount that it's going to step over. I think the other way is useless. This is just better. Number of offset step overs. I don't know what this does. I mean, I've tried using it before. You can put in whatever you want here and it just doesn't do anything. I'm sure it has some function, I'm just not sure what it is. The tooltip should probably be improved or something to tell me what that's doing. Maybe it has to do with that I always use this. I don't know. Contour offset is really useful in those instances where you have the geometry on the model and it's really close, but you're running up against that, it needs to be offset a bit. You can sort of, this literally just takes and offsets whatever you have selected as your curve and causes it to generate as though it was offset on, and it does a good job. It extends it always in the way that adds toolpath. I don't think that it does it in a way that subtracts toolpath. Super useful. That can save you from having to make a sketch. And so I'm going to skip morph mode and hop down to this one, which is pass extension, which basically does the same thing. It acts to trim or actually to extend your selection out. I can't remember. I think one of the issues I've always had with this is that you're probably selecting a spline, and splines don't really like to extend a lot of the time. Maybe it just sort of does what I always do and sort of adds a line onto the end that's tangent and extends that. If it does that, then that's cool too. I gave up on sort of using the two of these and almost always just create a sketch because it just gives so much more control and makes it so much more better. Morph mode. So you have simple and closest, and closest really sounds like it's just going to make your world better and just do a better job, but I've actually found that simple generates faster and usually just produces a cleaner result. Let's take a peek. Well, we'll generate this when we're done. I don't think there's anything more here that's specific to Morph. At some point maybe I'll do something that just sort of covers a bunch of this stuff, but I think that's kind of basic. You can figure out what they do.